I was called infertile by my mother-in-law and my husband supported her in painting me bad, so I divorced him, married his cousin, and became a mother to twins. I never thought I'd be sharing my life story on Reddit, but here I am, desperately seeking advice from strangers on the internet. I'm a 35-year-old woman, and my life has turned into a soap opera that I never signed up for. Let me start from the beginning. I met my husband, Eric, during our sophomore year of college. We were both studying business, and we ended up in the same group project for our marketing class. Eric was this whirlwind of energy and ambition. He had his whole life planned out: graduate with honors, land a job at a top firm, climb the corporate ladder, and eventually start his own company. I was more of a go-with-the-flow kind of girl, but his drive inspired me. We started dating a few months later, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had direction. Eric pushed me to be better, to want more for myself. We graduated together, both landing decent entry-level jobs at competing firms. Those first few years were tough, long hours, tight budgets, and barely any time together, but we made it work. 3 years into our relationship, he proposed. I'd been saving up for months to buy the perfect ring. I had this whole romantic evening planned: a fancy dinner, a walk in the park where we had our first kiss, and then popping the question under the stars. But life had other plans. The day I was going to propose, Eric called me in tears. He'd been passed over for a promotion he'd been working towards for months. He was devastated, questioning his career choices and his worth. I scrapped my elaborate plan and instead showed up at his apartment with his favorite takeout and a bottle of wine. As we sat on his tiny balcony, commiserating about the unfairness of corporate life, I realized there would never be a more perfect moment. He pulled out the ring and asked me to marry me right there, both of us in our work clothes surrounded by empty takeout containers. I said yes, and for a moment, everything was perfect. Then came the wedding planning, and with it, my first real encounter with Karen, Eric's mother. I'd met Karen a few times before, but always in group settings where she was on her best behavior. Now, faced with planning her only son's wedding, Karen's true colors came out. Nothing was ever good enough. The venue was too small, the food too exotic, the music too modern. She criticized every decision we made, from the color of the tablecloths to the style of my dress. Eric tried to mediate, but it was clear he was struggling to stand up to his mother. The breaking point came when Karen insisted we invite Eric's ex-girlfriend, Tina. Apparently, Tina's parents were old family friends, and it would be rude not to include them. I put my foot down, and to my surprise, Eric backed me up. It was the first time I saw him really stand up to his mother, and I was proud of him. The wedding itself was beautiful, despite Karen's best efforts to micromanage every detail. Eric was radiant, and as we said our vows, I truly believed we could handle anything life threw at us. The first few years of our marriage were good. We both advanced in our careers, bought a small house in the suburbs, and started talking about having kids. Eric wanted to wait until we were more financially stable, which I understood. We were doing well, but kids are expensive, and Eric had big plans for his career. Around our 5th wedding anniversary, I started feeling ready for fatherhood. My sister had just had her second child, and seeing her with her kids awakened something in me. I broached the subject with Eric, but he was hesitant. He was up for a big promotion and didn't want to jeopardize it with my pregnancy. I tried to be patient, but as another year passed, I couldn't help feeling like our life was on hold. We had endless discussions about the right time to have a baby, but there was always another reason to wait: a big project at work, a planned vacation, a possible job change. Finally, 2 years ago, Eric agreed it was time. We were both excited, imagining nursery colors and debating baby names. But as months passed with no positive pregnancy test, our excitement turned to worry. After a year of trying, we decided to see a fertility specialist. The doctor suggested we both get tested to rule out any issues. I went for my tests right away, eager to get answers. My results came back normal, which was a relief, but also added to the pressure on Eric. Eric, however, kept putting off his appointments. At first, it was understandable. He had a big presentation at work, then he caught a nasty flu. But as weeks turned into months, I started to get frustrated. Every time I brought it up, Eric would get defensive or change the subject. That's when Karen started getting involved. She'd call Eric constantly, asking if there was any news. When Eric would visit his parents, he'd come home upset, saying Karen had been pressuring her about grandchildren. I tried to be supportive, but I couldn't help feeling like Eric was letting his mother have too much influence over our lives. Things came to a head last Thanksgiving. We were at Karen's house surrounded by family. Karen had been drinking wine all afternoon and was in rare form. She started going on about how all her friends were becoming grandmothers and how she was starting to feel left out. Then she looked right at me and said, "It's a shame Eric married someone who can't give him children. I always knew you weren't woman enough." The room went silent. I felt like I'd been slapped. Eric just sat there, staring at his plate. I tried to explain that we were still trying, that these things take time, but Karen wouldn't let up. She kept making jabs about my femininity, saying Eric should have married Tina instead. At least she came from good stock. I couldn't take it anymore. All the frustration from the past year came pouring out. I stood up and told everyone at the table that I wasn't the problem. My fertility tests had come back normal. It was Eric who hadn't even bothered to get tested yet. The aftermath was ugly. Eric was furious with me for betraying his trust. Karen was on the warpath, calling me every name in the book. I left the house and spent the night in a hotel trying to figure out where we went wrong. When I got home the next day, Eric was still angry. He accused me of humiliating him in front of his family. I tried to explain that I couldn't stand being blamed and shamed for something that wasn't my fault, but he wouldn't listen. Things have been tense ever since. Eric still refuses to get tested, and now he's giving me the cold shoulder. Karen has been calling and texting nonstop, demanding I apologize to Eric and her. I've blocked her number, but she just keeps finding new ways to harass me. I don't know what to do. I love Eric, but I'm starting to wonder if we want the same things in life. I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, trying not to upset him or incur Karen's wrath. To make matters more complicated, Eric's cousin, Liam, reached out to me yesterday. Liam and I have always gotten along well. He's a few years younger than us, and he's always been the black sheep of the family, choosing to become a teacher instead of going into the family business like Eric did. Liam said he overheard what happened at Thanksgiving and wanted to check if I was okay. We ended up talking for hours. It was nice to have someone on my side for once, someone who understood how overbearing Karen could be. Now I'm at a crossroads. Part of me wants to fight for my marriage to try and get Eric to see how toxic his relationship with his mother is, but another part is wondering if it's time to cut my losses. I'm 35 years old, and I want to be a mother. I don't want to wake up at 45 bitter and childless, resenting Eric for robbing me of the chance to have a family. I never thought I'd be in this position. Any advice would be appreciated. Am I the a-hole for defending myself? Should I have just kept quiet and let Karen continue to berate me? How do I get Eric to see that his mother's behavior is destroying our marriage? Update 1. It's been a month since my original post, and to say a lot has happened would be an understatement. I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. Your comments really helped me gain some perspective on my situation. After reading through your responses, I realized I needed to have a serious conversation with Eric. I couldn't keep living in this limbo with unspoken tensions and resentments building between us. I decided to take a day off work and ask Eric to do the same. I wanted us to have time to really talk without any distractions. That morning, I made Eric's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup. It was something I used to do every Sunday when we first got married, but somewhere along the line, we'd stopped making time for those little gestures. As we sat at our kitchen table, the familiar smell of pancakes in the air, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe we could find our way back to each other. I started by apologizing for my outburst at Thanksgiving. I explained that while I regretted the way I handled it, I couldn't apologize for the feelings behind it. I told Eric how hurt I was by his silence, how I felt unsupported and blamed for something that wasn't my fault. To my surprise, Eric broke down. Through his tears, he confessed that he'd actually gotten tested months ago and found out he had some fertility issues. He was afraid to tell me because he thought I might leave him. He'd been carrying this secret for months, letting me think he was just procrastinating on the tests. I was shocked and hurt that he'd kept this from me, but I tried to be understanding. I asked him why he thought I would leave him over this, and his answer broke my heart. He said that growing up, his mother always emphasized that a man's worth was tied to his ability to give children. Karen had drilled into Eric's head that if he couldn't give his wife children, she would inevitably leave him for someone who could. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. So many of Eric's actions over the past year suddenly made sense. His reluctance to get tested, his defensiveness whenever I brought up kids, his silence in the face of his mother's attacks on me, it all stemmed from this deep-seated fear that he wasn't man enough. We spent hours talking that day, really opening up to each other in a way we hadn't in years. We agreed to start couples counseling to work on our communication and to help Eric work through some of the damaging beliefs his mother had instilled in him. We even started researching adoption and IVF options, feeling like we were finally on the same page about our future. For a few weeks, things were looking up. Our counseling sessions were going well, and Eric seemed more relaxed and happier than he had in months. We were connecting again, rediscovering the love that had gotten lost under all the stress and resentment. But then Karen got involved again. Somehow, he found out about Eric's fertility issues. I suspect Eric's cousin might have let it slip. He's always been a bit of a gossip. Instead of being supportive of his son during this difficult time, Karen went on a rampage. She started calling me daily, leaving long rambling voicemails blaming me for stressing Eric out and causing him fertility problems. She'd say things like, "If you were a real woman, you'd have given him a baby by now. And I always knew you weren't good enough for him." I tried to block her number, but she'd just use a different phone to call. Then she started showing up at our house unannounced, demanding to speak to Eric alone. The first time it happened, I came home from work to find Eric in tears on the couch with Karen pacing around our living room ranting about how we needed to try harder, how Eric wasn't doing enough to fix himself. I asked Eric to set boundaries with his mother, but he always had an excuse. "That's just how mom is," he'd say, or "she's just worried about me." It was like we were right back where we started, with Eric unable to stand up to his mother and me feeling like an outsider in my own marriage. Things came to a head last week. I came home from work early, hoping to surprise Eric with tickets to a concert he'd been wanting to see. Instead, I walked in to find Karen in our living room going through our personal documents. She said she was looking for our medical records because she didn't believe Eric really had fertility issues. She thought we were lying to cover up my inadequacies. I lost it. I told Karen to get out of our house and stay out of our business. I told her that her behavior was toxic and that she was destroying her relationship with her son. Eric, instead of backing me up, started shouting and saying I was being too harsh on his mom. That night, after Karen left, Eric and I had a huge fight. I told him I couldn't keep living like this, with his mother constantly interfering in our lives and Eric allowing it. I said I felt like I was married to both of them, not just Eric. Eric accused me of being selfish and not understanding how difficult this was for him. In the heat of the moment, I said something I regret. I told Eric that if he couldn't stand up to his mother, maybe he wasn't ready to be a father himself. It was a low blow, and I knew it as soon as the words left my mouth. Eric slapped me, then left the house. I spent the night on the couch feeling lost and confused. The next morning, Eric was still gone. He left a message saying he was going to stay with his parents for a while to clear his head. It's been 5 days, and I haven't heard from him. Karen, on the other hand, has been blowing up my phone with angry messages. She's telling everyone who will listen that I kicked Eric out and abandoned him. Some of Eric's relatives have been calling me, demanding to know why I'm abusing Eric. It feels like I'm living in some sort of twisted alternate reality where I'm the bad guy for wanting a healthy relationship with my husband. I'm at my wit's end. I love Eric, but I don't know if I can continue living like this. The stress is affecting my work. I've been distracted and irritable, and my boss has noticed. My health is suffering too. I've lost weight, I'm not sleeping well, and I feel like I'm constantly on edge. Liam has been a great support through all of this. He's been checking in on me, bringing me meals, and just lending an ear when I need to vent. He understands the family dynamics better than anyone, having grown up with them. He's told me stories about how Karen treated him when he decided to become a teacher instead of going into the family business. It's helped me understand Eric's behavior better, but it's also made me realize how deeply ingrained these toxic patterns are. I'm grateful for Liam's friendship, but I can't help feeling guilty about how close we've become. There's nothing inappropriate going on, but I know how it might look to others, especially given how Karen's been painting me as the villain in all this. I'm considering asking Eric for a trial separation. I think we both need some space to figure out what we really want and if we can make this marriage work. But I'm afraid of what Karen might do if I suggest this. I wouldn't put it past her to try and turn the entire family against me. I never thought I'd be in this situation. I always believed that love was enough, that if you cared about someone, you could work through anything. Now I'm not so sure. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to save myself, let alone my marriage. Any advice on how to proceed would be appreciated. How do I protect myself without completely burning bridges? Is there any hope for Eric and me, or am I just prolonging the inevitable? And how do I deal with Karen's smear campaign against me? I'm feeling pretty lost right now, and any guidance would be welcome. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and my life has completely turned upside down. I'm still trying to process everything that's happened, but I'll do my best to fill you all in. After Eric left, I tried to give him space. I thought maybe some time apart would help us both clear our heads and figure out what we really wanted. But as days turned into weeks, I realized something had fundamentally changed in our relationship. During this time, I threw myself into work and started seeing a therapist on my own. It was helping me gain perspective on my marriage and my own role in our problems. I realized that while Karen was a huge issue, Eric and I had our own communication problems that predated his interference. About a month after he left, Eric finally reached out. He wanted to meet at the cafe where we had our first date. I was hopeful that we could work things out, but that hope was quickly shattered. When I arrived at the cafe, Eric was already there, sitting at our old favorite table by the window. He looked tired and sad, but there was a resolve in his eyes that I'd never seen before. We ordered our usual drinks, a latte for him, black coffee for me. And for a moment, it felt like old times. But then Eric started talking, and I realized this wasn't going to be the reconciliation I'd hoped for. He told me he'd been doing a lot of thinking and he didn't want to continue our marriage. He said he felt like we wanted different things in life and that the stress of the past few months had shown him that we weren't compatible. I was stunned. I asked about couples counseling, about working on our communication, but Eric had made up his mind. He said he'd realized that he wasn't ready for children and might never be. He knew how important being a mother was to me, and he didn't want to hold me back from that. What hurt the most was when he admitted that Karen had been a major influence in his decision. Apparently, Karen had convinced Eric that I was emotionally abusive and that he deserved better. Eric actually apologized for letting me mistreat him for so long. It was like he was parroting Karen's words, and I couldn't recognize the man I'd married. Eric handed me divorce papers already signed. He said his lawyer would be in touch about dividing our assets. Then she got up and left, leaving me sitting there with a cold coffee and the ruins of my marriage. The next few weeks were a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the pain. I stopped answering calls from Eric's family members, tired of defending myself against Karen's lies. My own family was supportive, but they lived across the country and couldn't offer much practical help. Liam was there for me through it all. He'd come over with takeout, force me to go for walks, and just sit with me when I needed company. He understood the family dynamics in a way no one else did, and it was comforting to talk to someone who knew exactly how manipulative Karen could be. As I spent more time with Liam, I started to see him in a different light. He was kind, supportive, and seemed to understand me in a way Eric never had. I found myself looking forward to our time together, feeling lighter and happier in his presence. One night after a few too many beers, Liam confessed that he'd had feelings for me for years. He said he never acted on them out of respect for Eric. But now that we were getting divorced, he couldn't keep it in anymore. I was conflicted. Part of me felt like it was too soon that I should be grieving my marriage, but another part recognized that Liam made me happier than I'd been in a long time. We agreed to take things slow to give ourselves time to figure out if this was real or just a reaction to everything that had happened. We started dating quietly. I know it's not conventional dating your soon-to-be ex-husband's cousin, but it felt right. Liam understood my pain and my history in a way no one else could. He encouraged me to keep going to therapy to work through my feelings about the divorce and my fears about starting a new relationship. Of course, when Eric and Karen found out, all hell broke loose. Karen started spreading rumors about me in the family, saying I'd been cheating on Eric with Liam all along. Some family members who had previously been sympathetic to me now turned cold, believing Karen's lies. Eric was hurt and angry, accusing me of moving on too quickly. The irony of Eric being upset about me moving on when he's the one who left and filed for divorce wasn't lost on me. But I was done letting Karen and Eric control my life and my happiness. I know this update might make me sound like the bad guy, but I'm finally putting myself first. Liam and I are happy, and we're taking things one day at a time. The divorce is moving forward, and while it's painful, I'm actually feeling optimistic about the future for the first time in a long time. It's not the life I imagined for myself, but maybe it's the life I need. I'm learning to trust my own feelings and needs rather than constantly trying to appease others. It's a work in progress, but I'm getting there. Update 3. It's been a year since my last update, and what a year it's been. I never could have predicted where life would take me, but I'm happier now than I've been in a long time. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. It wasn't easy. Karen tried to contest it, claiming I had been unfaithful throughout the marriage. Thankfully, my lawyer was able to disprove these allegations, and the judge saw through Karen's attempts to manipulate the proceedings. In the end, we settled on a fair division of assets, and I was able to keep the house. Liam and I are still together, and our relationship has only grown stronger. We moved in together 4 months ago, and it's been amazing. He understands me in a way Eric never did, and we communicate openly about everything. We've had our challenges, of course. Blending our lives hasn't always been smooth sailing, but we face everything as a team. The biggest news, though, I am pregnant with twins. I found out a couple of months ago, and we're over the moon. It's ironic considering all the fertility struggles with Eric. But I guess life has a way of surprising you. We weren't actively trying, but we weren't preventing it either. When I saw the positive test, I felt a mix of joy, excitement, and fear that I'd never experienced before. We're converting the spare room into a nursery, and Liam's been reading every parenting book he can get his hands on. I'm nervous about becoming a mother, especially to twins, but I'm also excited. Liam's calm confidence is reassuring. He keeps reminding me that we'll figure it out together. When we announced the pregnancy to our families, the reactions were mixed. Liam's parents were thrilled, but, of course, Karen hit the roof. She started spreading more rumors, saying Liam had stolen me from Eric and trapped me with a pregnancy. It's ridiculous, but some people seem to believe her. Eric's reaction was unexpected. He reached out to me directly for the first time since the divorce. He congratulated us, but also expressed how hurt he was. I could understand his pain, and part of me felt guilty. But I also knew I couldn't live my life based on Eric's feelings anymore. We had a long, honest conversation that gave us both some closure. He admitted that he'd let his mother influence her too much and that he regretted how things had ended between us. The pregnancy news seemed to be a wake-up call for Eric. He finally stood up to Karen, telling her to stop spreading lies about me and Liam. It was too little, too late for our relationship, but I appreciated it nonetheless. Eric and I aren't friends, but we're civil now, which is more than I expected. Karen tried to cause trouble one last time. She showed up at our house unannounced, demanding to speak to Liam. She tried to convince Liam that I would abandon him, and just like I abandoned Eric. Liam, bless him, stood his ground and told Karen in no uncertain terms to stay out of our lives. I'm proud of how Liam handled the situation. He's strong in a quiet way, always sure of himself and our relationship. It's refreshing after years of walking on eggshells with Eric and Karen. As for me, I'm still in therapy, working through my issues from the marriage and preparing for motherhood. I've reconnected with old friends who had drifted away during my marriage, and I'm building a support system independent of Liam's family. Work has been going well. I got a promotion a few months ago, which couldn't have come at a better time with the babies on the way. I took a year off from work after the twins are born, and Liam's new salary will help us manage that. Looking back on everything that's happened, it's been a wild ride. There were times when I thought my life was falling apart, but now I can see it was just falling into place. Liam and I are excited to start our family, and I'm looking forward to this new chapter in my life. I know this might not be the happy ending some people expected, but it's my happy ending. Life doesn't always go according to plan, but sometimes the unexpected turns lead us exactly where we need to be. I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned, even the painful ones, and I'm looking forward to the future with hope and optimism.